歡迎大家。
Let me welcome you all for attending the panel on food safety and environmental hygiene meeting. There are two items on today's agenda. First, issues relating to regulation of private columbaria and supply of public niches. It starts now to 10:30. There will not be a break in between. And at 5:30, at the end of this agenda item, there will be a 5-minute break. And afterwards, we will continue with the second item, which is prevention and control of avian influenza. The administration will give us the latest situation. I welcome deputations and individuals for coming to the meeting to express their views. We've received indications from 41 deputations for attending. I know that some of them will attend but will not speak. And please indicate to us when it's your turn whether you will speak. There are some deputations and individuals who will not be present but have submitted submission. They have been tabled. If you need to use the earpiece, channel 0 is the floor. Channel 1 is Cantonese. 2 is English. 0 is the floor. Representatives of deputations and individuals, please note that when you speak, you are not covered by the Legislative Council Powers and Privileges Ordinance. Your submissions are not covered either. Before I ask deputations and individuals to speak, I will first give the floor to Dr. Cole, Secretary for Food and Health, to take us through the administration's paper in relation to issues relating to regulation of private columbaria and supply of public niches. Dr. Cole, please. Chairman and members, I'm here to speak to you on issues relating to regulation of private columbaria and supply of public niches. We will give you information about our progress of work. We've adopted a multi-pronged approach. We promote green burial. We will develop public columbaria. We will step up consumer education, law enforcement, and embark on regulation of private columbaria. In relation to green burial, this is an environmental approach to burial. We encourage the community to accept more environmentally friendly and sustainable means of disposal of human ashes. These include scattering of human ashes at sea or gardens of remembrance and in internet and memorial service. We also step up public education. In 2012, we have dealt with 2,814 green burial cases. It's maybe 8 times the number of 2007. You can see that the number of cases is still small. But if we are to change the custom and culture and make green burial the trend, it involves a change of mindset and culture. Cremation has been increased by 90%. This is our capacity, and it's been going on for half a century. We don't want green burial to take us long. We need the acceptance and cooperation of the public. And hopefully in the near future, green burial will be the mainstream approach. Between 2012 and 2015, the FEHD, the Food Environmental Hygiene Department, and the Wahab Cemetery, Diamond Hill, Columbaria, and Cheung Chau Cemetery will be expanded. They will provide over 45,000 niches, and there will be about 48,000 extra columbaria. And in relation to cemeteries managed by religious groups, there are about 24,000 columbaria niches available. There will be about 50,000 new niches available in cemeteries run by religious group. These are new supplies. But as you know, we are talking about a number of deaths between 40 to 50,000 a year. That is still unmet demand. In the short time, between 2012 and 2015, the number of niches supplied fall short by a large extent from the demand. The last government put in place policies to identify suitable sites in all 18 districts for new columbarium development. There are altogether 24 potential sites. We are conducting feasibility studies. Some of them have been completed, some of them are in progress. Starting from the second quarter of 2012, we have been consulting district councils. Apart from the Diamond Hill project, Cheung Chau project, these extension project, we get the Kwai Ching DC support of the Ting Chun Road project. The change of land use will be submitted to the Town Planning Board in 2014. Wahab Shek 1 and Sandy Ridge and Zhangzhou. We have consulted the North District Council and the Tuen Mun Council.
We have already got the support in principle because the district councils, whilst showing support in principle, also made some suggestions on enhancement in road infrastructure works, and we're exploring these suggestions. Apart from the 5 DCs mentioned, in 2014 we plan to consult 9 other DCs, including Eastern, Central and Western, Shamshui Po, Kwun Tong, Southern District, Chun Wan, Yuen Long, Tai Po, and Sai Kung. We are still unable to ascertain whether we get the support of Sha Tin DC, but we'll continue to discuss with Sha Tin DC on the site in Sha Tin. As for the remaining potential sites, they are of a smaller scales. If everything goes smooth, if all the projects get support from DC as well as LegCo, then accumulatively by 2031 we'll be able to supply hundreds of thousands of new niches. But I'd like to reiterate that we face technical challenges as well as the need to address the community's concerns in supply of new niches. We also need to enhance road infrastructure traffic problem is the major obstacle. Different crowd control schemes might have to be implemented. For example, time limited limited visiting hours during peak periods, and also to try to maximize the potential of these sites and to explore other options for the continuous supply of new niches. For example, consider time-limited occupation of new niches, and I reiterate, this is only for new allocated niches. We all need to understand that for burial in private cemeteries or public cemeteries, if the niches in columbaria are for permanent use, it may not be conducive to the situation. I understand that there are different views on our proposal. I hope that this is the first step to motivate a discussion in community. With limited land supply, we need to consider, apart from our traditional model, we should explore new ideas for continuous supply of new niches, enforcement actions, and consumer education. Nuisance costs to the neighborhood and UBWs, we understand these problems. The relevant departments, Planning Department, Lands and Buildings Department, have been enforcing the laws and land leases where applicable, including issuing warning letters, enforcement notices, and removal orders. Dr. Ko, please speed up. Please be succinct and give us a gist. Madam Chair, I'm doing it as quickly as I could. And taking prosecution, litigation, and other legal actions with a view to curbing the proliferation of unauthorized private columbaria, coupled with the list published by the Development Bureau. Some existing private columbaria have sought regularization or ceased operation. All departments would continue to stay vigilant, and we have also stepped up consumer education. And I will spare the details. Now, on the proposed private columbaria bill, we're working full steam in drafting the bill, and subject to LegCo's approval and actual ExCo's approval, we will take a step forward, because enforcement action will not be confined under the existing regulatory framework. For unlicensed columbaria or columbaria not exempted, in the future will be allowed to take enforcement action. We can target on non-compliant columbaria. The bill can also set out penalty levels. The FEHD will act as the authority of the licensing board and will also be the enforcement agency. At present, a number of niches are already in place, and if we take enforcement action against private columbaria that are non-compliant, we might have to be concerned about the possible closure of business of the operators to evade criminal liability before the bill comes into effect. Because of the sensitive nature of this issue, and after the closing down of the business of these operators, the society will need to face up to the problem of the interred ashes. So we need to take a pragmatic approach. We need to formulate a system that can allay the concerns of various stakeholders. And we need to consider various factors. For example, the wider community interests, including meeting society needs for provision of columbaria, and also the sentiment of descendants and minimizing the nuisance caused by such columbaria, and finally, to ensure a sustainable mode of operation in the long run. Now, subject to the outcome of consultation and views from the relevant sectors, we have conducted a business impact assessment, BIA, to study the implications of the proposals. We have set out the recommendations in the paper. As I said earlier, we plan to introduce the bill into LegCo by the end of this year. However, we would like to improve the bill. For example, we'd like to clarify and stipulate the arrangements which would already originally be dealt with by administrative means, and would like to spell them out in the provisions. So it will be delayed, and I don't think it is fair, because before the policy is rolled out, usually the government will conduct a BIA, and that also happens in other policy areas. The outcome of the BIA will help the government improve the proposed regulatory regime. And the former Deputy Secretary for Food and Health earlier, on the 16th of March last year, already mentioned that a BIA will be conducted to study the implications of the proposals on the trade. And in the paper to the panel on the 11th of December last year, I also made it clear that the BIA would be conducted. And I want to reiterate that for Part A and Part B of the list published by Development Bureau, the columbaria on those two parts should seek regularization so that the columbaria can continue its operation legally. After the bill is passed, only those already regularized can apply for a license. I would like to say something about the bill. The bill will set out some criteria including the existing criteria applicable to columbaria. And only by meeting these criteria can the operators get a license to run a columbarium. And after the passage of the bill, all operators are required to apply for a license. And the licensing board may be taking enforcement actions against columbaria, which in their view may not be able to comply with the licensing requirements within 18 months. And there are also some existing columbaria, and under certain conditions, for example, if there is no imminent danger to life or property, then exemptions may be granted. But it doesn't mean that we're going to legalize the irregular columbaria. If there is danger to public, then the government can still take enforcement action. For private operators, some of them might need time, and they might also have the motivation to apply for regularization of their private columbarium, so that eventually they can apply for a license, and time will be given for them to do so, and we will suspend the enforcement action to be taken. However, they must meet all the requirements stipulated in the bill to be passed. Dr. Cole, maybe we will pause here. Today's meeting is about receiving deputations. So I'd like to thank the Food and Health Bureau. Apart from Secretary, we also have government officials from Development Bureau, Buildings Department, and FEHD, and also private PricewaterhouseCoopers, and I won't read out their names. So I will invite deputations to speak one by one. Each deputation will be given 3 minutes. We'll keep the time, and afterwards I hope that members of this panel can ask questions, and time will be given for the administration to take their questions. So, first speaker, Mr. Benny Poon from DAB. Thank you, Madam Chair. In recent years, there is a severe shortage of public niches, and for private columbaria, they have been running against the law, and the consumers are not protected. We have the following suggestions. First of all, we note that the government has identified some potential sites for columbaria development, but they are very close to residential neighborhood. We are concerned that traffic congestion might be caused in the neighborhood, and it might cause unnecessary nuisance to the residents. So we're asking the government to formulate measures to allay the concerns of the community. For example, the management of columbaria should be modernized, and there should also be road infrastructure support. The community and stakeholders' views should be carefully considered before the policy is implemented in order to allay residents' concerns. And some illegal operators are at present using this vacuum period to attract more customers, and they carry on the sale of niches in a unlawful manner. So during this vacuum, apart from publishing the list, a dedicated team should also be set up to tackle columbaria that contravened or breached land leases so as to protect the interests of consumers.
Lastly, in relation to the undersupply of niches, the FEHD once proposed about restricting the time for for ash interment and by way of allotment reuse such niches. But it's Chinese tradition that our ancestors will have a resting place by putting them in niches unless there are no choices. We will not propose without good reason to move the ashes of our ancestors, because that would be considered not filial. If the administration, for the sole purpose of vacating niches, put in place a time limit of such interment or charge a management fees, we will object to that. The fee will be unfair to low-income earners or the elderly people. That's all I want to say. Thank you. Next, the Against Elderly Abuse of Hong Kong, Mr. Fu Wai Lok. Thank you. We all die one day. Well, when you are alive, you need a roof over your head, and that is the case when you die. You need some place of burial. We rely on the administration to provide such service, but there is no regulation of private columbaria, and that's why it's all a mess. You see that there are columbaria just trying to get business, and in the end, when things go wrong, well, they just scatter. They just scurry away. We don't want our ancestors' resting place to be disturbed. Niches is a problem that has plagued Hong Kong for a very long time. Since the introduction of cremation, the administration has not given us a sufficient supply of niches. Well, we have HOS, the home ownership scheme, and we hope that for those who have died, there will be something similar. The dead need a resting place, And because of their short supply, niches are, well, the urns are placed everywhere, causing disturbance. As the Secretary said that in the past, buildings may be low-rise, but that is not the case anymore. But can these columbaria rise up to have a lot more stories, so that there will be places to place urns, and to have these places in industrial areas to reduce the nuisance to residential area? We think the responsibility is squarely on the shoulder of the admin. And in relation to regulating the time of paying homage, well, I think that it is not like you can take time off work anytime you want. And there is also the Chinese calendar. We have the Qingming Festival and the Chongyang Festival, and these are the festivals for sweeping grapes. And if the time you allow for us to go sweep grapes falls on an inauspicious day, should we go or not? Perhaps, Secretary, your practice is different from that of local Chinese. They propose a time limit. Is it going to be 8 or 10 years? The time is up. Thank you. Next, Sha Tin District Councillor, Mr. Chang Cho Kwong. Thank you. First, I thank Dr. Kuo, the Secretary, for coming to Sha Tin to discuss with us about niches. Your potential site identified is a prime site next to residential area. For people who are living, they don't even have a place to live. If you use that site as columbaria, it will be a waste. Perhaps there will be possible site near Fushan. In that area, there is a refuse collection point. And that waste collection facility may be moved to a rock cavern. And I think that will be a very good site. There will be 4 public housing, residential housing estates to be developed in Shek Mun. There will be a lot of blocks built with Monshan Railway. It will make that place an ideal residential site. There are many other sites that are suitable in Sha Tin. There are a lot of private columbaria near the hillside. On behalf of Sha Tin, my constituency, I raised these points. Of course, we know that there is an acute shortage of niches, and this is a problem left by Donald Tsang. He said that in every district there should be a site for columbaria. This is unrealistic. You have to take reality into account. So I hope that the Secretary will find alternative site for such a development. That's all I want to say. Thank you. Next, New People's Party, Mr. Henry Pak. We have an aging population. The administration should have careful planning when it comes to population policy. They should be mindful of the increasing demand of niches. The number of deaths is on the increase, so is a cremation. In 2012 is 39,000. In 2020, it may increase to over 40,000. But there is a saturation of available space of niches. So the administration should find ways to increase supply. There is a lack of proper regulation of private columbaria. There is no consumer protection. Members of the public has been complaining to the Consumer Council, and they involved illegal, unlicensed private columbaria that is got fire risk, and the size they advertise is smaller than those in reality, and sometimes you cannot change the ownership. There is no protection to consumers at all. Our party advocates the licensing regime to regulate private columbaria. We think that this will improve quality of private columbaria and at the same time protect consumer. We understand that if there is a mandatory phasing out of private columbaria, it may run counter to our custom, and there won't be any public acceptance. And we think that substandard columbaria should be phased out, but there should be a grace period for them to adapt and to adjust so that they will meet all the requirements. If there is no imminent danger and the columbarium operators undertake to introduce improvement, then perhaps they can apply for an exemption, and the exemption should be on a one-off basis. And during this period of exemption, the operator should improve the quality, the standard of the columbaria to meet all the requirements. And there should be regulation of extension or sale of niches during the exemption period. Priority should be given to those who have purchased niches. If the operators cannot meet the standards, then enforcement action has to be taken, and we have to also take into account public safety. Next, Mr. Ken Chow, Yuen Long District Councillor. Private and public sector on the short, medium and long term should meet the supply of 40,000. Well, no matter how hard they try, they will not be able to make available a sufficient supply of niches. There will always be a shortage of 0.7%. I was talking about 40 to 50,000. So altogether 100,000. So it will only be enough for 2 years. Including the 120,000 from Sandy Ridge, it will only be enough for several years. About 2 years ago, the Liberal Party went to the planning department to suggest identification of suitable sites on islands, and it may meet the demand of up to 1 million niches, and this will also reduce nuisance to residential areas. Another proposal is rock carving. Suitable rock carving can be developed into columbaria or interim facilities, because after cremation, a lot of the urns are put in residential areas. They are kind of like hotels for urns. There can be an exemption period of, say, half a year. And sometimes the queue is so long that they will have to be placed there on a temporary basis for a very long time. And there should be measures to take care of the interim storage as well. And this business impact assessment report, how can they ensure that those under column 1 will do its best to protect customer? Well, what about those under column 2? Those that should have been phased out, will they be regularized in some way? We're very concerned. Column 2 ones are waiting for the chance for them to be regularized or legalized. Their method is to keep supplying information for it and ask for a deferment. Residents in the areas are disappointed all the time, and consumers are misled. Well, they think that when the number of urns have reached a certain level, then the administration will have no choice but to legalize us or regularize us. Everything should be frozen. The number of urns kept should be frozen. And apart from planning, building, and fire services, concerned groups and groups who are familiar with the situation should send representatives to attend these meetings. Next, Mr. Daniel Lam, Hong Kong Women's Association. There is no long-term planning in this issue, and their policies lack vision. As a result, private storage areas have been expanded to Wu Wu Street, and it has affected our area. That we are one of the hardest hit. Residents in Hong Kong are subject to the nuisance. Columbaria is a necessary community facility. We are happy to see that they're doing something to increase supply to meet demand. But for the funeral services in Hong Kong, it has already saturated. We can no longer take any more. We suggest that the administration should first deal with illegal private columbaria in the area. All you need now is to meet land lease and planning requirements. There is no need to get a license because of weak enforcement action. There has been a lot of private columbaria mushrooming. And as a result, there is noise pollution, fire hazard, and environmental pollution. And this has affected residents in our district. Over the years, residents have been reflecting the views. However, there is no improvement so far. There are a lot of illegal columbaria in Hong Kong. They have caused a nuisance. We urge the admin to regulate private ones and to phase out illegal operators and to put in place some deterrent penalty. And in relation to new ones, they should be away from residential area, and they should the appearance should be improved. Noise pollution should be taken into account, and also air pollution. We object to a time limit and a charge of management fees for public niches, because this goes against our customs. They charge us a management fees, so it's unfair to those with no income or the low-income group.
Finally, there should be a compensation mechanism for existing or even new niches. Some community enhancement schemes should be in place. For example, there should be greening and beautification projects and more community facilities for us to be engaged and make the decision together. Next, Mr. Siu Tin Hong from Hong Kong Resident Service Organization. Thank you, Madam Chair. On behalf of our organization, I'd like to express my views on private columbaria. First is on regulation on private columbaria. Now there are a lot of burial takers and the columbarias, and also shops selling all the worshipping items in Hong Kong district. And for Part A and Part B of the list, there are 17 such columbaria in Hong Kong area. Most of them belong to residential D zone, that is no burial service facilities or placement of niches are allowed. However, since 1975, that we have seen more and more such operators, and they burn incense and worshipping items, causing air pollution, noise nuisance, and residents seldom wander in the streets. They dare not go out because the air is not fresh, and the administration should license private columbaria as soon as possible and review the eligibility of private operators in Hong Kong, and the modernized management methods should also be introduced by drawing reference from the Japanese experience. And on the grandfathering arrangement, we agree that private columbaria should comply with all the requirements on building safety, fire safety, air pollution control, and sustainable development. Now, we agree that the licensing period should be 5 years, but once the licensing system comes into effect, many operators in Hong Kong will not meet the requirement, in particular on land leases and fire safety. There should be a transitional period of 1 to 2 years so that the operators can gradually comply with the requirements. And ordinary residents wouldn't like burial activities or columbaria in their neighborhood. And Hong Kong, it's in busy district in Kowloon, and Hong Kong railway station is a busy transport hub. And Hong Kong has great potential for redevelopment. It's hard to understand why, as soon as tourists steps out of the Hong Kong station, they can see many operators in the district. We think the administration should take up a more proactive role. The situation will only get more serious with severe supply shortage. The government should identify suitable land for public niches to avoid private illegal operators from spreading to other districts as well. All right, thank you. It's like as quick as a machine gun, but I suppose government officials as well as members have heard you loud and clear. So, may I remind deputations here, please pay attention to your placard. We understand that you would like the government officials to understand your viewpoint, but we also have video recording at the moment, so when you speak, please take note whether your placard is blocking the view. Otherwise, those in front of the TV won't know who is speaking. So when you speak, do move away your placards. Next, Yat Tong Community Network Association, Mr. Kok Chung Man. Thank you, Madam Chair. Is there a cap on the number of licenses? Should we consider the licensing system comprehensively? Will we consider a basket of factors? Will there be a full exemption or half of exemption? Or should due process be adhered to? Or is it a decision made by just one person? Well, it's just a or talk shop. Now, columbaria facilities should be regarded as infrastructure facilities, and the work should be properly done. We are just fulfilling our duty as citizens in Hong Kong. We'd like to minimize the harm done because of the wrong decision. I hope the administration can withdraw this bill in the pipeline. However, the administration already has a preconceived stance, and that is a licensing scheme will be introduced. A consultant can conduct a study and overturn all the views expressed. Licensing system can, the BIA can provide a shield for private illegal operators, and local residents will continue to suffer. Rational discussion has turned to favoritism towards private columbaria. What about their responsibilities? There will be hundreds of thousands of niches to be dealt with, or earns to be dealt with. However, we must tackle the problem. If we can resolve the roots of the problem, we should think in the long run. We should set up a timeline which is sustainable. I don't think I need to say more. The administration should not be too sympathetic and make less than objective judgments. you still have 45 seconds. One mistake, and that's link read. And now this licensing system will be in place for a long time. Ming Yushan is one example. When it went bust, the administration got scared. Licensing may resolve the problem in the short run, but in the long run, the bomb will just explode. Such kind of incidents will just repeat itself. So I so submit, Madam Chair. Next is signing Hong Kong, Mr. Zimmerman.
Officials, I'm a district councillor of a constituency that has more dead people than living people. It's Pok Fulam. And I'd like to point out that I've just distributed, just before this meeting, this photograph which shows the entrance to a new columbarium of 36,900 niches. And this is the footpath. 36,900 niches, and this is the footpath. This is the quality of the planning of our columbaria in Hong Kong. Where are the people going to walk? And the answer still has not been provided by government, because Transport Department has given no objection to the FEHD, and the FEHD has just approved it without talking to the neighbourhood. And because they haven't spoken with the neighbourhood, they have approved it on the basis that Transport Department has said that's okay. But Transport Department looks after cars. They don't look after pedestrians. 36,900 niches, 40 centimeters of footpath. And still, FEHD has not taken its responsibility under the ordinance, which is section 4, 1, 2 and 3 of the private cemetery regulation, to demand and instruct changes to the design and the volume of that columbarium. They are not taking responsibility, and I talk here to the officials, please get your people to take action. Chair, it must be very clear, we're not, unlike Sha Tin, in Pok Fulam, we're quite happy to have more dead people. I like to be clear, we have not objected to the new columbarium, we have not connected to the new public columbaria, and we're not objecting, and we will not object. The community is happy to live with the cemetery that have lived with for the last 100 years. But we want better regulation. We want better planning. We acknowledge that there is a genuine demand, but you've got to get your procedures for planning of columbaria organized. This cannot happen, 40 centimeters for 36,000 niches. It tells you that you are not organized. So we want you to be organized. And the unique nature of columbarium is very simple. We've got festivals and we've got funerals. And you have to cope with both. The Transport Department doesn't know how to do that. So you have to make sure, as the authority, to make sure that you get enough input. And you can get enough input when you let the community participate in the discussion. You have gone ahead with this columbarium and given your approval without talking to the community. You've done the same in Tin 1. You've gone ahead with a columbarium change. You've not spoken to the community. You've not spoken to me as a district councillor. You've not come to our district council to talk to us. You've just gone ahead and given approvals. If you do that, you don't have enough information. You cannot rely on the Transport Department. You cannot rely on the Planning Department. All of them have limitations to their mandates and limitations to their procedures. You have to speak to the community. You have to give them input. You have to make sure that they heard before you sign off on the design and the addition of no columbarium. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Zimmerman. I think the government will be happy to hear that in Pok Fulam they are not going to object to more columbaria, but better planning and management is necessary. Next, Mr. Eddie Chair from Alliance for the Concern over Columbarium Policy. Now, first of all, we would like to express our deep dismay towards the delay in the legislation, and we are very angry at Dr. Ko for letting the illegal private operators go scot-free. Dr. Ko, you have high popularity rating as a principal official, so when you first assumed the office, we were very happy that you came and exchanged your views with us. And at the last LegCo panel meeting on the 11th of December 2012, you explained to us that there is a short supply of public niches, and because of that, private or columbaria mushroomed, and you said that you were determined to tackle those illegal ones. We were waiting for your policy to be rolled out, but today in your paper you talked about BIA, which actually gives a very good excuse for illegal private columbaria. So you say that pragmatism should be considered. However, what you're telling the public is that you are bowing to those with vested interests. You have no option but to concede. And just now, some other deputations talked about BIA as the shield and as the excuse for you to let the private illegal operators go lightly. The 15% maintenance fund has been waived in the BIA study, and no town planning approval is required. Because once approval is required, you can envisage the problem. You won't know how to handle the interred ashes. However, Secretary, if one breaks the law, one breaks the law. You shouldn't ask the offenders how they should be dealt with. This is a superfluous question. So we're really angry at you, Secretary. You must tell us today the details of this BIA study and tell us whether you will just let the illegal operators go scot-free. And we also oppose the grace period, because I think all private columbaria are already very clear that they need to comply with the town planning requirements. There is no reason for them to be given another 18 months to comply with the requirements.
Next, Kowloon City District Councillor, Mr. Pius Yam. I'm not going to speak for now. Okay, then next, Mr. Jie Xingkong. Well, with ever-expanding burial ground, one day there won't be any place left. So the new government will need a new mindset to introduce vigorous reform and promote green burial. With the new secretary taking office, Dr. Cole, I see that he's put his heart into serving the public. And he realized the crux of the problem, and that's why he has to do something concrete to solve the problem. But when I see the report from the consultant, it's something done behind closed doors. The problem is not mentioned. Residents are not consulted. They only consult the trade, the funeral service trade. So I really doubt his motive. And we've heard from deputations that they only tip towards private columbaria. They don't mention anything about residents. What I propose is green burial, environmental friendly funeral services. We need new mindsets for different burial methods. We have only developed 10% of Hong Kong. There are lots of hillsides. And since time immemorial, burial grounds are on hills. You just remove one or two hills, and you will be able to take care of demand. Why do you not consider those sites, but keep eyeing residential area? It's just like Hong Kong. there should not be any columbaria there. But now you even talk about exemptions. We need to think out of the box to promote green burial, and it should not remain on the drawing board. And you should license private columbaria. Next, Tuen Mun District Councillor Ms. Ho Hang Mui. Thank you. There should be an increase of supply of public columbaria. That should be the backbone to be complemented by private ones. The last government identified 24 sites in 18 districts for such development. But I don't see the determination from the administration to increase supply. Say, for example, there are only 200 niches in Tin Hau Temple. In Cheung Chau, though, it's only for Cheung Chau residents. In Zhangzhou, Tuen Mun, when the district council was consulted, there was no objection from the council or from the residents. District councillors from Tuen Mun DC asked to increase the number of niches in Zhangzhou. And the only condition is to have a road leading to Park Lai to alleviate traffic, but that was turned down by the government. The administration should find ways to increase the number of niches of public columbaria. These can include vacate land burial sites and turn them into columbaria, and to build public columbaria in areas away from residential area, and to build a road leading to Park Lai from Zhangzhou so that 100 or 200,000 more niches can be made available, and consider building public columbaria in rock carving. And to give us a timetable and the supply so that the public will have an idea of how long they will have to wait to get a public niche. Thank you. Next is Corporated Owners of Parkland Villas, Mr. Kenneth Chan. Please move the placard, otherwise we won't see you. We are subject to nuisance of Kick Lok Monastery that is next door to us. Private columbaria should remain a certain distance from residential area. Illegal ones should not be licensed, otherwise it will set undesirable precedents. Private columbaria should have private access, and there should be limit on the traffic allowed. Location of the columbaria should be accepted and agreed upon by residents. The total area of the columbarium should accommodate a maximum number of niches. Otherwise, there will be too many people going to sweep graves at the festivals. The FHB said that the license may last for 5 years. But what if there are problems and the operator's license cannot be renewed? They may say that, well, we can't find the families of the urns and cannot return them. It's just like Kick Lok Monastery. They said that they cannot contact the family to return the urn. That's why they still have to occupy the land. And in the end, it's down to the government to pick up the pieces. The FHB said that existing columbaria can be exempted. But you're talking about pre-existing private columbaria. But for public ones, well, they should be operating for 30 years and are open to the public, not just existing monastery keeping niches for their followers or for their monks. And there should not be any illegal structures in the columbaria, otherwise there will be a safety hazard. And charges and sale and price should be made clear, and the term of use and the size should all be very well stipulated. The Bureau should require applicants to provide information about the cleansing and measures to reduce pollution. Niches should not be seen from the outside because this will make people feel uneasy. Lighting. Excessive lighting should be banned because this causes nuisance. Thank you. Next is a concerned group against the Giglok Monastery. Thank you. Please maybe move your placard. Of the different trades in Hong Kong, including columbaria, they should be subject to government regulation. Lands Department should take enforcement action. It's our experience that there was no enforcement action taken or only weak actions were taken. Taking the example of Giglok Monastery, they have occupied government land and land over years, and they are operating an illegal columbarium. There has been 3 summonses and 4 removal notice, and each time it attracts only a fine of $400. In 2012, the Lands Department was criticized that the maximum fine of $10,000 under the Lands Miscellaneous Ordinance is outdated because it's not changed since 1972. Director for Lands should review the penalty level so that it will have a sufficient deterrent level and should continue to consider amending the legislation and impose a daily fine. The monastery occupied government land. Despite warning, they continue. Because of restrictions of the ordinance, the Lands Department will not return items confiscated. So they are holding the niches as bargaining chips. We asked the FHB to require the FHD to give supporting services for interim storage of urns when they are confiscated. We asked the Bureau. They said that they have to seek legal advice and refuse to answer us. On the 11th of December last year, the Secretary said that he would consider phasing out illegal columbaria. However, there is he said that he would consider temporary storage of the displaced urns in the FHD. 2 months prior to the enforcement action, they can make announcement on newspapers to inform families. For those urns that are not moved, the FHD can keep them for temporary storage. There is only the Kwai Chung crematorium for such purpose. There is a capacity of 3,000 niches, and the existing policy is outdated. Next is Mr. Lau Siu Won, Action Group Against Connivance of the Government of Illegal Operators. Next is Mr. Donald Chan, 抗議食衞局推卸責任行動組 is an action group against the Bureau of Passing the Buck. Next is Mr. Gong Cheng Xiao, is the action group to request a legislation to regulate private columbaria. I'm not going to speak. Next, Mr. Gong Chi Yip is an action group in protest of the government of not taking enforcement action. He's not here. Next, Mr. Wong Kwok Ho is an action group protesting against the Giglok monastery for operating as an illegal columbarium. We believe that niches provided by monasteries or temples are legal, and these operators always package themselves as such to attract customers. The administration talks about the 96 illegal columbaria, and they always use the same tactics to attract customers. Since 1928, there is a registration under Chinese Temple Association, and the fine then was 2,000 for any irregularities. In the year 2000, there was a suggestion of a review. Tanya Chan, the legislator, and Mr. Kenneth Chan, the incumbent legislator, also asked for review, but it's been over 10 years and nothing was done. We see something from this. In Hong Kong, we think that these temples are quite accessible, and these places should be used for columbaria. So it seems that they are given a free rein, and even if there is irregularity, the fine is low. We have a Yinsen Temple on Lantau Island. In 1996, they were registered. They've been operating as a temple, but in year 2000, year 2001, until now, very often they were acquired by a private company and converted into a columbaria because there is a lot of money to be made. The Siloam Temple in Sha Tin in 1992, it was established. But it was deserted. In 2006, a Hong Kong businessman saw the opportunity and acquired the temple and its land and turned it into a columbarium. There are 5 blocks of niches offering 9,000 places. In Tuen Mun, there is the Kik Lok Monastery. The situation is the same. It's very close to residential area. Sorry. Next is Alliance Against Chung Wo Ching Sai's columbarium in Ma Wo.
小文女士，係it's hard to define whether it is illegal or legal, said Dr. Cole on 6 October in newspaper on CC. Your speech is obviously disappointing us and an encouragement to those who build and sell illegal columbarium. To our understanding, those columbariums are on green belt and government lands, and they have been proven by the related authority as illegal. For sure, Hong Kong government is in short of columbariums, but definitely you must not turn what is illegal to legal. CWCS, that is Chung Wo Jing Se, should not have changed the land used by themselves before getting any approval from the Lands Department of change in the use of land. Phase 2 of Garcigo Gardens will be in 1994. Now we have totally 5 phases with over 7,500 residents. The residents have chosen to live here because of the quiet and green environment. You can see the photo. This is the aerial photos from the government we gained. In 1993, it's all green, and the trees were cutting down by 2012. And however, CWCS illegal practices have led to the serious deterioration of our environment. Okay, I will just make it to. We understand these correspondence are actually we have proven we have somebody who go up to the columbarians, the institute, and check. They were sold 2,000 pieces out of the 7,000 pieces now they have built illegally. Since 2008, they have made a total of 6 applications, and we have received 1 more application today. 14 deferments. And the planning department say that under the present law, they can't do anything. They have to accept their applications and deferments, even though the illegal construction are built on the green belt and government land. The building department actually has issued demolish order to CWCS. These are regarded by CWCS, and the building department has no follow-up actions to penalize the institute effectively. So our requests are very simple, and we have 4 points. And I'm sure Dr. Kong can help us if you wanted to. Number 1, the planning audience is outdated and must immediately be reviewed. As not only CWCS and also other self-seeking money-grabbing institutes. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
跟住咧係
All right, next. Typo Alliance against governments turning a blind eye to illegal columbaria. I won't speak at the moment.
Number two, governments should build more public columbarium far from residential areas. It is a good idea to build the columbarium in grottos as suggested by Dr. Wong Ping Wan. Item 3, the government should pass a law to freeze the existing illegal columbarium trading. Number 4, all proven illegal structures should be removed before applications for change in the use of land. Thank you.
好咁跟
All right, next. A Typo Alliance requesting for legislation on private columbaria. Ms. Leung Yat-see? Absent? All right, over on this side. Alliance against not punishing illegal columbaria. Mr. Yip, absent. And also an alliance against Typo Chung Wo Ching's columbarium, Ms. Chung Ching. I think the Town Planning Board plays a very important role. It's not just the Typo Chung Wo Ching but Kik Lok Temple as well. I think the Town Planning Board has been too lax in allowing them the request for deferral to supplement information. They deploy the same tricks time and again, and yet the Town Planning Board doesn't have any strategy to stop them repeating it. Residents, on the other hand, have to mobilize the neighborhood to state our objection. We're exhausted. They should not let them off so easily. Before legislation, I think at least more work should be done by the Town Planning Board. All right, next, Typo Alliance for protestation against the government for non-enforcement of the law. Mr. Leung Hong-Fai. Government officials, Madam Chair, residents. I represent myself. I'm a resident living in a private housing estate in Ma On Shan, and I attended living in Ma Wo, and I've been attending different meetings of this nature, and each time my speech would just be disregarded. Our government officials receive fat sums of money. During the British colonial rule, we had no say. We were second-class citizens, but now we are in charge of our own place. And what mess have we got ourselves into? From Xi Tong to Donald Tsang, especially when Donald Tsang said that he was just doing his job. And now C.Y. Leung, he carried a stool and seemed to be listening to us. And after the talk, nothing happened. Had he not come out for election, nobody would have known there were illegal structures in his home. So he just set a bad example for everyone as the top of government. As for the rich, they suck money out of everything they can. Even columbaria. For Chung Wah Ching said it's a very small place, but after it was bought by the rich, now it can provide thousands of niches, costing at least 10 or tens of thousands, or even 100,000 per niche. So it's all about our livelihood, from Xi Chung to Donald Tsang to C.Y. Leung. Just look at protests and demonstrations. I'll save the talk on livelihood. So Dr. Ko, other government officials, you must act. All right, next. Alliance on a concern on supply of public niches. Ms. Chang Ling Ying. It's against the rule of law in Hong Kong because it encourages illegal operators to operate, and it causes a great nuisance to the neighborhood. They breach the law and then they apply for regularization. Those illegal columbarium operators must apply for town planning approval for change of land use first. And all illegal operators should not be granted a license in future, nor should there be any grace period. The town planning board should not accept the development first, apply later applications. All papers should be submitted at the time of application, and no re-application should be allowed within 2 years after the application has been rejected. Next, Mr. Chen Wing-Chung, a policy group on legislating on columbaria. Mr. Chen Wing-Chung, I am not going to speak. Next, Ms. Yip Po Kam, I'm not going to speak. All right, next one. Ms. Leung Hoi Ting from another concerned group. I'm not going to speak. All right, so further next to her, Mr. Yao, no. Shit Fong, are you going to speak now? No. Next, Ms. Zhong Yuk Ying. Lo Wai Columbarium Concerned Group. Yes, thank you. Government officials, Dr. Ko, I liked you very much. As soon as you assumed office, I said that you were a good official, and yet you are bowing to pressure. You are giving them licenses. I'm very disappointed. The same with Town Planning Board. Every time their application for deferral is allowed, after we raise objection, well, it quieted down for a while, and then another application for deferral was allowed. So what is going on? For villages, for the underprivileged, for powerless like ourselves, we are being oppressed. Do you have this experience? I have this experience. You're being impossible. All of you are high-ranking officials. I'm just an ordinary citizen. So, Secretary, Dr. Ko, at first, you agreed that something should be done, and now you say that a licensing system should be introduced. I really don't get it. I'm illiterate. I never received any education. For decades, I've lived in Hong Kong. I'm in my 70s. I'm leaving this world soon, but I'm here because of what? Because I like to state my objection for others. All the evil powers, well, I put up with it, even if I am taken out and shot to death. But I need to say this. High-ranking officials, you are one of them. You should shoulder your responsibility. Whoever he is, chief executive or what, don't just bow to pressure. Think in the interest of the lower class. All right, Dr. Ko must have heard you loud and clear. Next, To Fung Shan Environmental Concern Group, Ms. Ho Fu Chun Ha. Madam Chair, in 2006, the administration already regarded this columbarium in To Fung Shan as illegal, and a clearance order has been issued, and yet no further enforcement action had been taken. The columbarium is still expanding, and there are more columbaria now. Our villagers are very perplexed. In 2006, the administration already turned down the application. In 2013, however, the transport departments, the police, during peak grave sweeping seasons, arrange for road enclosure. So we're very puzzled. The columbarium used to be the residence of the Moroccan consulate, and there is a change of land use. The government should face up to this problem. If not, villages could have joined this trade because and reap a huge profit. We didn't do that because, well, in fact, a few years later, all villages could take part, join that columbarium in doing big business.
Next is Miss Sinma Kitching. Is that the Alliance in objection to letting illegal operators go scot-free. Well, I've been living in where I live for a very long time. There's a winding, narrow road, and during holidays, there are quite a lot of visitors using that road. It's not suitable. It is not a place for heavy traffic because the road is simply too narrow. And every time you get a consultancy report, they serve the rich. They always say that there is no problem. And it's down to residents to fight for our corner. The secretary served the public, so he should not just read the consultancy report, but instead go to the actual site. We are not highly educated, and we just want to get some help. Thank you. Next is demand for legislation to regulate columbaria. We are a resident of To Fung Shan. We object to illegal operation of columbaria. There are policies. They operate in green belt. They cause traffic problems and nuisance. We have dual carriageway, and it's a narrow road. And very often there are heavy-duty vehicles using that narrow road. And as a result, there is traffic congestion. There are about 4 passing bays there, but it's only enough for 4 heavy-duty vehicles, or 2 heavy-duty vehicles, or 4 smaller vehicles. And when there are more than 10 cars, 10 vehicles, the whole road is blocked. There are officials coming to Tofengshan to explain to us, saying that according to the report submitted by Ding Touyun, a columbarium, the traffic congestion is not too serious because of the passing bay or the lay-by. But that is not the case. Vehicles are afraid to scratch themselves, or they are scared that they may be knocked off the road. So they refuse to give way. And they stopped. The whole traffic is put to a halt. Well, very often, if you just want to get going, then your car will be scratched, or your tire will simply go into the ditch. The official said that the police department has not received any complaints. But very often, when there are disputes or when the vehicles are scratched, they don't go to the police. That's why the number of cases does not reflect reality. And there is also the livelihood problem. There are 2 religious groups there. During Saturday and Sundays, there are wedding ceremonies. There'll be coaches, there'll be visitors. Thank you. Next is concerned group against columbarium from Tingshan village. Mr. Zhong, I'm not going to speak for now. Next, resident of Shengwo Chair, Mr. Kwan. Thank you. Well, now they talk about executive-led, and this government has got no public mandate. I'm very disappointed. So we have the residents will have to do things ourselves. At first, we had some expectations of the officials or councillors who represent us, but because they are subject to pressure or some other reason, they took an about turn. We have very humble requests. We just want our lives to be well taken care of, a place to live when we are alive, and a resting place when we die. Mr. Ko is an official that is very much responsible for our lives. Say, for example, food and health care, and now our resting place. Why would they let illegal operators off? You need a license to operate if you run a restaurant. Even if you are a tourist guide or an escort or a real estate agent, you need a license. But for private columbaria, they don't need a license, and they're making a huge profit. There is the business impact assessment report. Who created this? Can they maybe base it on some reasonable scenario? Or why would they concern themselves about the business environment of something illegal? Or would they do such a report of a vice business or gambling establishment? Why do they not do it in accordance with the law and instead make a complete mess? Sha-Tin is an area that is hard hit. I do support columbaria as long as they are legal. Why would you legalize illegal ones? And when it comes to law enforcement, departments pass the buck. And people make use of loopholes. Some deputations said that an application that goes to the town planning board, they try to make use of the loophole by supplying further information, and there is nothing departments can do. And they are using the niches as bargaining chips to force the government to legalize them. Please pay attention to this. Next is Alliance to seek compensation against Meng Yushan. As we all know, the Secretary, Dr. Ko, has a high popularity rating. He put his heart into serving us. I'm just a humble citizen, and I do have high expectations of Dr. Ko that he will work for us. I'm only a small potato. I've never even dreamed about coming here. There are problems caused by private columbaria. The complexity of the problem is beyond my imagination. My mother bought a niche for 2 urns for herself and my father. At the end of 2010, the government announced information about land leases, and we found that Meng Yushan is on list B. The administration did not say clearly that it is illegal, and there was no follow-up action. Meng Yushan lodged an appeal with the court. We waited. At the end of 2012, Meng Yushan keeps lodging appeal, and at the end of 2012, they lost their case. And I sought compensation from this company. Can you imagine that the office of the company is now emptied? The company used the time to change its telephone number and address. And this is the parent company. The subsidiary company changed its address and name and telephone number. And their asset has been transferred out. And there are a lot of offshore subsidiaries under this parent company. We contacted the Hong Kong EX and obtained a telephone number of the company. We finally reached them. We talked to the directors of the company, but they were using excuses after excuses. In the middle of this year, the parent company has sold off the Meng Yushan business. They have juggled with financial tactics to avoid their responsibility, and they have transferred their assets away. The columbarium is now abandoned. Over the year of seeking compensation with the assistance of legislators, I reported the case to the police and the Consumer Council. These departments and organizations know full well of the irregularity and the illegality, but there is nothing they can do. Yes. Next, Ms. Wong demand immediate regulation of columbaria alliance. I am now telling you the plight of Hong Kong residents. Starting from 2008, residents of Hong Kong has been staging protests to fight for their interests. But the FHB simply turned a deaf ear. And they treat us as if we got in the way when others are making huge profit. There are 102 licenses. 75 of them are in Kowloon, 63 in Hong Kong. Government officials are inert. They don't help us. And they have this business impact assessment report made for them. As you all know, no matter how much we fight, we are met with delaying tactics. They don't try to understand the environment we're living in. Let me give you some examples. My neighbor, Mr. Wan, he's ill. He would like to get some rest at home, but because of the nuisance, he did not get any rest. He had to take to the street to fight. And there are some elderly people, they go to swim every morning to stay healthy. But with the columbarium opening up next to them, in several months' time, they contracted lung cancer and passed away. Is it really the case that the burning of paper offerings will pose no harm to our health? And people who would like to study, they can't study because of the noise generated by the chanting. Undertakers are given license, and they get tax from them. But can it replace human lives? Dr. Ko, please take immediate action, legislate to regulate these columbaria, because Hong Kong residents are waiting for you to save their lives. I thank the deputations and individuals for speaking, and that is all for deputations and individuals for making comments. And if you haven't given us your written submission, please do so. And I will first defer to the administration to respond to deputations and individuals. You have 5 minutes. Afterwards, I will open the floor for members to ask questions. And members may ask questions or get clarifications from deputations and individuals, or ask follow-up questions from the administration. Members, would you please make an indications that you would like to speak? Let me read out some names. Kenneth Chan, Michael Tian, Peter Chung, Raymond Wong, Alice Mack, Priscilla Leung, Ray Chan, Stephen Ho, and myself. Anyone else? Anyone whose name I did not read out? If not, first I ask Dr. Ko to give us reply. First, I'd like to say that a large number of deputations and individuals have expressed their objections against the licensing regime. When it comes to regulation, there are two sides. With regulation, we have to phase out those who do not meet statutory requirements.
Only those that meet legal requirements will be granted the license. And what we are minded to do is to have a bill to regulate private columbaria. But it doesn't mean that we're going to turn illegal operations legal and have them licensed. Different illegal private columbaria meet different conditions. Some are situated in commercial and residential areas. Some pose various hazards. I can't say all of them, but the majority of them is not going to meet the licensing requirements when the bill is passed. But then by then we will have a regulatory framework so that enforcement action can be taken by a single department instead of various departments taking different actions. In the past, there was no licensing regime, so nobody gets a license. If there is no danger involved, and if gradually the operator can upgrade the conditions of the columbarium so that all the licensing conditions are met, then you can apply for a license. I understand there are concerns that the licensing regime proposed by the administration is for the convenience of having all of them licensed, but that is not the case. Only those meeting the licensing requirement in future will get a license. And I understand that there are operators who are more responsible, and many of them are NGOs. They don't aim at making a profit. Some also indicate that they like to meet the requirements, but they need time. And that is why we're giving them a grace period. If they can meet the requirements before the period expires, they can apply for a license. If not, they will be phased out. So you can see there are two sides to this regulatory framework. I myself am waiting for the system to be introduced so that there are legal justifications for us to have them phased out. There are also views that or concerns raised. Yes, we do have this concern. If a large number of private columbaria are to be phased out, those interred ashes will have nowhere to go. If the family members cannot be identified, well, that is the reason why we have so many private columbaria and a severe supply shortage of the supply of public niches. If we need to make arrangements to find niches for the displaced ashes, it will also affect the general public who wish to buy new niches. That's why we have this temporary measure. Likewise, I cannot carelessly say that make this announcement and let the public have this impression that they can buy whatever niches they want and the government will make arrangements for them eventually. Well, we have a number of members waiting to ask questions, so three members, questions and answers included, and a couple of members as well. So Dr. Kenneth Chan, followed by Mr. Michael Tim. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, deputations and individuals for coming. They have been subject to this nuisance for a long time by those illegal private columbaria. They have time and again come to this council to seek help. I've assumed office as a LegCo member for less than a year, and in relation to Mingyue San and other illegal operators, I have been helping local residents and holding meetings with government officials to find solutions. Now, after this paper is issued today, I don't think the public is accepting it. There is indeed a grave concern, and there are questions whether Secretary is bowing to pressure, whether Secretary has run out of tricks. Well, we You say that for those complying with the requirements, they will get a license. For those who cannot, they will be phased out. But it all depends on what requirements you're talking about. You commission the consultant to conduct a BIA study. Now, first of all, can you give us this BIA report? We need to look at the details. In para 19, the reason I'm saying this is in para 19, the government says that there are small-scale private columbaria of an unknown number, and then in para 21 or para 20, the administration says they also need to think from the perspective of these small private columbaria. So after this BIA study, we have this impression that things are being dragged on, and we have issues like occupation of government land and unlicensed sale of niches, and you're even taking care of the smaller columbaria now in your paper. You suggest that for small operators slipping under your radar, you also need to consider their position. So that's why we think you're relaxing the rule more and more. You talked about imposing a regulatory framework, but you give them a grace period to adjust, and that is why you must disclose details of this report, or we won't understand what is your theory behind it. The BIA study is exactly why we are asking these questions. Now, for Part B of the list, which contains illegal private operators, please tell me they won't be regularized and become legal ones in future. Now, please allow some time for the administration to answer. If you want an answer from the administration, no objection if I give the administration some time to answer this question. BIA report, or should we hear comments from a couple more members? It's difficult to keep control of the time. So let's see who else would like to ask the same question. Now, if you can't answer it now, I hope Secretary could give us a reply in writing. When the BIA study report will be released, and whether members of the Council and the general public's views will be consulted. Next, Mr. Michael Tian, followed by Mr. Peter Chang. Thank you, Madam Chair. I will be succinct in my question. The New People's Party support the licensing regime to protect consumers' interests and to regulate the trade. We also think that existing illegal or non-compliant operators should be given some time. Now, Secretary has suggested 2 years. The controversy we're having is that over the years the government has not regulated this business. For those which cannot meet the requirement within the 2-year grace period and have to be phased out, I think the government should provide temporary storage or temporary niches. The government also said that they consider this suggestion. Now, I don't know how many temporary niches you can provide. Do you have any number in mind about the number of illegal operators which will be phased out after the expiry of the 2-year grace period? And you don't want anyone to jump the queue. So for the displays niches during the grace period, they will be given temporary niches, and afterwards, if you can identify land and build another columbarium, they will be moved. Now, how can you make sure that you get the support of the neighborhood? And about the progress, you have 24 potential sites. Only 3 have been confirmed. There are 260 odd islands in Hong Kong. You can, like we said before, you can use half of the island for private columbaria to run the business there, and they should provide ferry service as well, so that we have public-private collaboration to unleash the potential of such islands or islands. Secretary, temporary storage. Well, one thing is clear. Even if there is temporary storage, their descendants cannot practice any worshipping there, because this will provide an incentive. Well, locations and numbers, I cannot disclose the details. I don't want to give an impression that you can be reassured, because it will be in a large quantity. On islands, yes, we do consider this suggestion, but for new columbaria, the greatest obstacle is traffic. I heard objections on the time, on the visiting time limit. Now, imagine you need to ride a ferry for 1 or 2 hours to reach an island. It's impossible to find any private operator to operate ferry service only during the peak seasons. All right, your comment is heard, Mr. Peter Zhang, followed by Mr. Raymond Wong. I'll follow up on Dr. Kenneth Chan's question. BIA, why was it necessary? Is it because you want to give them a chance, or you want to strike a balance? You can answer this question. Second question, how are you going to help victims of Ming Yusan? You have 2.5 minutes to answer this question. BIA study. I want to reiterate that BIA is just one of the elements for our consideration in our legislative process. We don't just look at the BIA report and its findings and follow all the recommendations. However, is it necessary to conduct a BIA? I think it is, because we need to gauge the consequence and public's views. If this piece of legislation is enacted, we should be prepared for the consequence. I hope members here would understand. It doesn't mean that we will definitely follow all the recommendations in the BIA, but it has to be done first. I heard some noise.
There is another question about Ming Yushan. The BIA, the Business Impact Assessment Report, will be published, but it's not completed yet. In the meeting, we made it clear that there is not enough time for us to complete the report and release it. And all I can do is to release the information available now. Ming Yushan, I'm not in a position to give you details about an individual case because I need to get more information. But will you undertake to meet with the people involved in relation to the Ming Yushan case? There is a legal procedure involved, so we can't just take it up and call all the shots. We have to act in accordance with the law. Thank you. You've conducted the BIA. I would like you to conduct a social impact assessment report. Otherwise, people will find you unfair. You also have to take into account the views of residents. We have done 2 public consultations. I think the name itself is wrong. The nomenclature is wrong, because if you call it business impact environment in Chinese, 营商环评, Perhaps the message sent by this name is to take into account the operating environment of those illegal operators. Mr. Raymond Wong. Today we're here to talk about issues relating to regulation of private columbaria and supply of public niches. I have questions related to two parts, but I only have 3 minutes, question and answer included. This problem is in existence for a very long time. The former secretary, Mr. York Chow, was asked for a timetable, but he did not give me one. This is a hot potato. He's been secretary for 2 terms, but he did not do anything. And at the end, there was a consultation, and there was public outcry, and you took this hot potato up. What you said at the beginning was that at the end of the year it will have to be introduced to the LegCo, but we are now at the end of the year, and that's when obviously we have to wait for next year. You said that the bill will be introduced to LegCo in the 2nd quarter of next year, so you are delaying. York Chow has been delaying for several years, and now you take this up. Because of objective and subjective conditions, you are forced to delay because there is no solution. My stance is very clear. I was in the same panel last term, and I have prepared a lot of policy papers, and I have warned York Chow. I support the private columbarium bill. And now you're still talking about the same thing? It will be a waste of time because there will be many other restrictions coming up. You have to really deliver. Across the 18 districts, there are 24 potential sites. Well, only 6 of those sites have got the support of district councils. 18 of them are still undecided. Well, do you have any ways to change the mindset and culture under your leadership? These are problems. How are you going to resolve them? First, regulation of private columbaria. I hope that the Secretary will give us a clear indication in this panel when you will be able to do it. Give us a clear answer. Well, and you now say the 2nd quarter of 2014, and it may be the 4th quarter later. Give me a clear answer. I'm confident that the bill will be introduced in the 2nd quarter of next year. When it comes to change of culture and mindset, well, let's see if I have time to elaborate. I think for that it will take longer than the 2nd quarter. Alice Mack, Priscilla Leung, and Ray Chan. 3 minutes. First, I thank deputations and individuals for coming here. A lot of them have expressed concern. This problem has been here for a long time. Just now the Secretary said that the earliest will be the 2nd quarter of next year. When it comes to the licensing, I think the process will have to be expedited. Prior to its introduction, there should be more public engagement exercises to engage the public, so that objections will be reduced when the bill is introduced. The later it is, the bigger the trouble. Whether it is Hong Kong or in the villages, there are more and more columbaria. Well, I've talked to my family members to not buy any List B niches, but I was told that, well, don't worry, they will not just leave on urns displaced. Well, but the thing is that when these illegal columbaria are phased out, the urns will really be displaced. Someone said that industrial buildings would like to be converted. Once an approval is given, and when the legal requirements are not met, what is going to happen? Number 3. It's nothing to do with Dr. Cole. We have the Buildings Department, the Lands Department, and the Planning Department too. Please expedite your enforcement action and the magnitude. We know that there are a lot of illegal columbaria. You issue them a letter and then you only go to inspect them half a year. And they've been dragging their feet and problem only gets worse. When we approach you, you fail to show us any progress, not even once a year. What can you do before there is a licensing regime? Can you step up your enforcement action? Secretary. Public consultation. When we introduced the bill, I believe that we will need some time for the bill to be scrutinized by the Bills Committee, and there will be public consultation. When we have the details, there will be a chance for public consultation. Priscilla Leung to be followed by Ray Chan and Stephen Ho. I want to be at the end. If there are still questions directed at officials after they have finished, then there can be a second round. In 2008, when I first joined the LegCo, my first question was on columbaria. Hong Kong is the hardest area in the Kowloon City District Council. This issue has been discussed many times. We need to separate flats for the living and resting place for the dead. And that is only a dream for residents. If you have a columbaria next to your house, it will be a nightmare. And I read from the press that there are a lot of operators who would like to make an application. They would like to get on the gravy train. And before they get any approval, they are already expanding their premises. We have to avoid a similar occurrence like that of Lehman Brothers. Burial of our ancestors is a very important thing. They spend $50,000 to $100,000, which is a substantial amount, to deal with the burial issues. If unscrupulous businessmen seize the opportunity to take advantage of the situation, and they will suffer. And this goes against policies to regulate them. I'm not talking about an individual building. The administration should play a role, and the role should be clearly defined. When it comes to housing supply, we have housing supply from the public sector. When it comes to niches, there are some singleton elderly people. They spend $50,000 to $100,000 to buy a niche, and in the end, their urns are just stored somewhere, anywhere. Perhaps potential sites in remote areas should be identified to provide niches, and there should be a cut-off date. I remember at the end of the last term we discussed the report, and if the deadline is not clear, people rush to get a license, it may backfire. So when we mention about regulation, substandard ones should not be issued licenses. It should be made clear at the outset. those who are illegal, we have to think about displaced urns. Next, Mr. Ray Chan, to be followed by Stephen Ho. Thank you. When it comes to columbaria problem, I think it's expectation management. We've been waiting for this for a long time, and we hope that there will be some substance in it, but we're disappointed. We're now representatives of government departments. They talk about what they have done and what they can't, and that's it. There is nothing we can do, so we expect to get something from the paper, but we're disappointed. First, some suggestions before criticism. It's not just about the placing of urns. It's also about paying homage as well. If you don't have to go visit the niche, then it can be the building can be as tall as it can be. And the administration talks about a time-limited occupation or a regulation of visiting times. Perhaps they can select a number of columbaria to put in place these pilot schemes. And make available new niches. I think people will choose. They would rather have a time-limited occupation and a limited visiting time, just so they can have a niche. Every year we have deaths of 40 to 50. And you say that as of 2031, there will be about 110,000 niches. How can you catch up with demand? And there are also some illegal private columbaria. Some people say that perhaps it's because it's out of your control. That's why you let them off. But it's not the case. I think it's about the displacement of urns once the illegal ones are phased out. And I have a question. Paragraph 26D3 says that a fund should be replaced. And an outcome-based approach has been counter-proposed by the BIA consultant in place of a fund. I don't really understand that. What do you mean outcome-based? Well, if necessary, the consultant will supplement. They said that there should be a plan to management and to ensure that the operation can be sustained. So from a point of view of a management, when there is a plan, I'd rather see a plan than some funds. But you proposed a maintenance fund and then you say that it is not necessary, there are alternatives. I am not going to say that it will give a certain impression, but the final decision is yet to be made. This is one of the alternatives, and now there is another.
Mr. Stephen Ho, followed by myself. And the next one is Mr. Wong Kok Heng. Thank you, Madam Chair. Today's discussion is on public as well as private niches, but I think the focus of our discussion so far has been on private columbaria, probably because there are many issues involved. Now, in my constituency, I've also received many complaints. In Sha Tin Shek Mun, must you build a columbarium there? There are a number of concerns, traffic, noise, environment. So can you tell me something about how you are going to resolve traffic problems? In Fushan, there is actually a place suitable for columbarium. So please elucidate on this point. Mingyuan, we see complaint cases. Now, after the bill is passed, perhaps you are going to see much more of these cases. How are you going to fight this war? And I'd like to follow up on Ms. Alice Mack's question on law enforcement. Do you have any difficulties in law enforcement, manpower shortage, for example, or inadequate legislation? Thank you, Mr. Ho. About Sha Tin, 2 sites were identified by the last term of government. One is in Shek Mun, the other is in Fushan. I'll just be very brief. In Shek Mun, we have objection by local residents. The design of the local barium, columbarium, is such that it provides good vista. The problem is about segregation of residential neighborhood and the columbaria, and how far should it be away from the neighborhood. For Fushan, we have the traffic problem, and we are still finding solutions to it. Mengyushan, well, the incident shows that in the end of the day, whether we like it or not, if there is great nuisance caused, it should be phased out. On the other hand, if there is a possibility that they can meet the requirement, we should help them become compliant columbarium, so that we can see we see less or fewer victims, instead of just taking action against all illegal ones. On traffic, this is the reason why we cannot provide too many niches at one place. That is why we have some suggestions: time-limited occupation and limited visiting hours. Again, there is objection to these 2 ideas. But if we don't introduce such measures, traffic capacity may not be able to cope with the peak seasons. If we have, we can provide more niches. Okay, my turn. I think it's a question of demand and supply. Supply can far from catching up with the demand for niches. That is why we see so many private columbaria, many of them illegally run. Last term of government tried hard to identify 24 sites. Only 3 have been confirmed so far. So you're making great effort in consulting the district councils, but it's just a consultation process. Are you going to give up on the district simply because there is objection? Now, there are district councils that counter-propose enhancement projects. So, do you have any plans to lobby the support of district councils? Now, some district councils are actively supporting us, and we are going to enhance the Harbak Road, and we hope to meet the demands of local residents. And with DC's support, we should be able to increase the number of niches. So please consider my comment just now. If we don't open the niches for the public on both days, then we should be able to provide more niches, and also outlying islands as well. I'm not talking about existing niches. I'm talking about new niches. If we put these new niches in the market for sale, we can impose the conditions limiting the visiting days or hours. This is the most important. As for time-limited occupation, well, in fact, we do have this existing practice for a burial. After certain years, the grave will have to be vacated. We can only recover 1,000 niches or so. As for limited visiting hours, if we have this measure, we can increase the capacity by 100 or 1,000 times. Any incentive to encourage cooperation? I don't think so, because we agreed at that time. We agree that there will be some moral responsibility. We cannot, however, we cannot mandate or compel any district council to accede to our request. Next, Mr. Wong Kwok Heng, followed by Mr. Wu Chi-wai. Thank you, deputations, for coming to give your views. From this issue, we see that the last term of government has not been able to resolve any problem, housing, even columbaria. Secretary, I understand the difficulties facing you. Now, you said that the bill will be introduced in the second quarter of next year, so we have a timetable. However, now on the management of private as well as public columbaria, I mean, as your policy matures, will you come back to report to us? Because I understand that you have come to this special meeting on members' request to discuss this issue, and the policy is yet to be formulated. So when are you going to come back and consult members' views? Well, if we need to wait for the policy or the bill to become mature, it will be in the second quarter of next year. By then, we can report to members in detail the bill. Now, on new columbaria, I don't recall whether it was from Mr. Ho or Mr. Chan, but in fact, I think it's from Mr. Ray Chan. We can roll out pilot schemes, for example, for new niches. And I'm not talking about existing ones. There are some 40,000. At the moment, I don't think it's appropriate to impose conditions. What about Tuen Mun and Zhengzhou and Qingchun? With LegCo and DC support, by then we can roll out pilot schemes. For example, we can impose a time limit, say 10 years. 10 years down the road, we can contact the descendants again. We can then place advertisements in newspaper, and if we cannot identify the descendants, we can then vacate the niche and put the urn in a temporary storage. So, Secretary, in short, please, before you roll out any policy, come back to this council and consult us, because it's a big issue. We're concerned. After you impose a time limit, what happens to those urns that are not collected by anyone? Okay, if we are to roll out a pilot scheme, we'll come back to the council. Next, Dr. Ann Chang, followed by Mr. Wu Chi-wai. Thank you, Madam Chair. Secretary. We all go through the different stages of life and the different issues of life, and it seems that a lot of them are under your purview. And as suggested by others, during major grave sweeping seasons, there are a lot of private columbaria and the burning of incense, smoke, and the crowds. Well, they're causing great nuisance to the neighborhood. In Hong Kong, where there are a lot of burial service operators and undertakers, there are lots of complaints from local residents about undertakers performing rituals and burning incense within a residential building, and the whole building is filled with smoke, and it's a great nuisance for local residents. Now it's said that the licensed undertakers will be exempted under the new legislation, and the Hong Kong residents are worried. Secretary, will you consider, before exempting the licensed undertaker from the new licensing requirement, that you will consult local residents? Secretary, for undertakers, I need to point out that it is not the same as columbaria. Some undertakers were granted license in the past, and they do provide temporary storage of ashes. But for new undertakers, or newer undertakers, they are not allowed to do so. So at present, we don't intend to regulate undertakers by the new piece of legislation for columbaria, because they're already regulated under the Undertakers Ordinance. However, should they cause nuisance to local residents, we will take enforcement action. I'm sorry, 3 meetings are going on at the same time, so I've just come back. Well, Dr. Chang, we said that 3 minutes will be allowed only for questions and answers, so please wait for your second round. Mr. Wu Chi-wai, followed by Mr. Chen Hang-peng and Mr. Tommy Chow. Madam Chair, first question on the licensing regime. I hope that it can be introduced as soon as possible. I can understand that there are people who have bought private niches for various reasons. If we don't tackle the problem, the situation of illegal operations will become more serious. Now the question is that some private columbaria may pass your test and some may not. Now, do you have any information? Which ones can pass, which ones will fail, so that the public will know it sooner? Now, the next question is about time or limited visiting hours. I don't support the time-limited occupation idea. But for the other idea, I support it. One example is that in Diamond Hill, the Diamond Hill facility, one floor has been reserved for smokeless worshipping. Some say that according to Chinese rituals, we must burn incense, but indeed it works, and it will help providing more niches in the district.
My constituency is right next to a columbarium. We've been protected by the ancestors buried there. This is a problem that all districts face. If we can resolve traffic problem, well, a newly constructed columbaria address the problem of uneasy feelings of the residents. But there may not be a lot of sites available, but the administration has not really been thinking about this place. It's the Sunny Bay. It's a vast area, so it is a good site. Secretary, I thank Mr. Wu. As to whether I can make an advance announcement, I'm afraid not. For multi-story buildings, the urban area, and areas with fire hazards, when the bill is endorsed, I don't see much chance of such operators being able to continue, and they will be faced they will be phased out, so please forgive me when I cannot give you the information. Mr. Chen Hang Pan? Thank you. Well, about the columbaria in each of the 18 districts, when it was first suggested, we knew it would be difficult. I thank the Secretary, who keeps an open mind to listen to our views. When it comes to time-limited occupation, we have reservations. Secretary, you said you're willing to put in place some pilot schemes of time-limited occupation, and at the end of the period that you will find place to store them instead of scattering them in the sea. And what about the underprivileged? Will that be a burden to them? If the bill is endorsed, some columbaria will be closed. What about those unclaimed urns? What if the operator insists on not closing down? What measures would you have to tackle that? For some columbaria, they involve conversion of industrial building. But the application has been passed on from one department to another. So it's not the case that some operators do not make an application. It's just that there is no coordination among the departments to facilitate processing of the application. Can the Bureau take a more active role when it comes to license application or redevelopment projects? If the bill is endorsed, the FHB will be the licensing body. What about redevelopment? What I see is that in this interim period, if they are illegal, well, they will not exist because I can't control the town planning board. And when it comes to new ideas, a time-limited occupation, the likelihood of it being implemented is low. Charging of a management fee, even lower. I don't know how much the acceptance will be when it comes to the limited visiting hours. This will have a big impact on addressing the traffic problem and conversion of industrial buildings. Well, if it's the traffic problem that is the hindrance, all I can do is to impose restrictions on visiting outside the Qingming or Chongyang festival, and this may reduce the the problem of traffic. Mr. Tommy John. Business Impact Assessment Report. The English name remains the same, but the Chinese is different. In the past, when it comes to legislation, I always ask for the administration to conduct such an assessment report. I don't know why it took the administration so long to do this assessment. I don't know whether it was because there was some hiccup. And the second quarter of next year, I don't find that acceptable. Every time the Bureau introduces a bill, they will be able to give us something, whether it is the nutrition label or what. They always introduce it in the second quarter. They want to take advantage of the imminent summer recess. I don't understand. Your Bureau always wait till the second quarter. I'm not happy about it at all. When a government department or a bureau introduces the second quarter a bill, well, then there is something dodgy. I guess that Even if you sent out an invitation to have dinner with me, it will be made in the second quarter. And I want to declare, I may have there may be ashes of my ancestors being placed at public columbaria. You said that there may be a time-limited occupation. I have a strong objection against to that. When it comes to land burial, of course, I agree with that because it takes up a lot of space. How big is the niche, do you know? Can you give me the dimension? I have to take some measurements. Well then, I don't find that happy. I don't find that funny. Why is it funny? I of course know how big a niche is because I've held my mum's urn in my hand before. So it's a small size. Why should there be time-limited occupation? I object to that. Do you have a question for the director? Yes, of course. Well, it doesn't really matter whether he chooses or not to accept that. I don't care if he objects to it. I was only smiling. It wasn't a personal attack. I want to tell him that the restrictions of limiting visiting of the two festivals, I don't object to that. You don't have to declare. I made it very clear. All these measures are related to new ones, and it's a decision to be made before you make a purchase, so there is no need for you to make a declaration at all. We finished with the first round. Some members would like to ask questions in the second round. There are 6 of them. Kenneth Chan, Alice Mack, Priscilla Leung, I myself, Ann Chang, Wu Chi Wai. Who else? If not, I'd like to ask 3 deputations or individuals would like to supplement or ask questions. 4 actually. Mr. Yam Kwok Tong and Mr. Kok Chong Man, Mr. Chair Sai Kit, and Mr. Chang Cho Kwong. Members, would you let the deputations and individuals ask questions first? If that is the case, then I will give them 1.5 minutes, and for members 2 minutes, because we have to finish this item at 5:30. 1.5 minutes for deputations and individuals. First, Mr. Yam, Kowloon City District Councillor. Why did we come here to see the Secretary? Because he gave us an undertaking that in November or December the bill will be introduced. But now you come up with this BIA report and you say that it will be delayed to the second quarter of next year. There are a lot of operators developing their project first and making applications later, and they've been delaying the application process, and we've been using our time to voice our objection. This is undesirable. It's a waste of our time. It's a waste of public money. It's very time consuming. We hope that in this bill there will be a period when the consultation document is issued, all private columbaria, all new private columbaria will not be allowed. And I hope the bill will cover columbaria that offers services on a rental basis, on a rental but long-term basis. Most of them are in Hong Kong. Next, Mr. Kwok Chung Man. and to be followed by Chair Saiki. I don't have a question of Dr. Ko, but the officials behind him. For Hong Shek Q, for NT Northeast, there is no planning for columbaria. It's because columbaria are scary, so scary that people will not buy flats. I have the question is directed at the officials behind him, and about storage. Temporary storage. Well, that can still be grave sweeping when these niches are in temporary storage. First question is about columbaria development in NT Northeast. As far as I remember, there is none. When it comes to a demand of columbaria, we look at the entire district. There are some large-scale columbaria in NT Northeast. That's why in the new development area there is no such land use being planned. And this is a huge loophole, because if you're looking at developed areas, it's difficult for you to find a site, and you don't earmark sites in new development area. You're only creating a problem for yourself later. Can you reflect to the Development Bureau the views expressed today for public columbaria in NT Northeast? Can you do that? Next, Mr. Tesakit. A minute and a half. The Secretary talked about borderline cases, and this is what we mean by letting them off. Before the bill is enacted, would you ensure that all columbaria meet all the legal requirements? I believe that none of them are in dilapidated or dangerous buildings, so they are all borderline cases. And these operators should be making applications now. About 80% of those columbaria that do not meet, that are illegal, are still operating. The consultant's report, when will it be completed? When will it be released? In the consultation paper, you said that you've inspected these places. Can you tell us how many out of these places, how many of them have been purchased? And how many of them have earned placed already? There already. When we mentioned about the Kiklok monastery occupying government land, will the lands department repossess the land? Will you raise the threshold for new applicants? I don't think there is time for officials to give a response. Please give a response in written form.
係鄭楚光先生。
Next, Mr. Chang Cho-Guang. 1 minute, 30 seconds. Sorry, speaker's not coming through. In Shatin, this problem can be solved. In Fushan, you can build a road and then the problem can be resolved. Another suggestion is that for the rock cavern, they are studying the feasibility of relocating the sewage treatment facilities in the cavern. I understand that it's feasible, and if we can do this for columbaria, then we can resolve the problem. For Loi Poshan, I understand that there won't be any traffic implications. In Shatin, since I am a district councillor, I understand the issue very well. So, Secretary, please consider, whilst the study relocating the sewage treatment facilities into a rock cavern is in progress, please consider it. For Fushan, if you can just build a road, the problem can be resolved, and I can help you do this in Shatin. Second round, we have Dr. Kenneth Chan, Alice Mack, Priscilla Leung, myself, Anne Chang, Wuchi Wai, Tommy Zhang. Who else would like to speak for the second time? No? I'll draw a line here. 2 minutes, questions and answers included. Dr. Kenneth Chan. All right, I'll speed up. Now, after the introduction of the list, Part A and Part B of the list, now from 2010 to September this year, the number of illegal columbaria have increased from 50 to 92 in Part B. And somebody mentioned Giglock Monastery, and somebody also talked about segregation of columbaria from the neighborhood. And you can see that there are so many undertakers here on several floors of a building. So I will give the following time to Secretary to respond to Mr. Chair's questions. On segregating columbaria and residential neighborhood. Now, you may not be aware of this situation. When we conduct the consultation, even if the columbarium is opposite the road on the top of the hill, people still have this impression. Now, the consultant hasn't completed the report yet. When we table the bill in the second quarter of next year, by that time the report will have been completed. And to reassure Mr. Zhang, I would not deliberately table the bill in the second quarter just because members will go, the LegCo will go into recess very soon. That's because it's bill, or if it was an undertaking given by the last time of government, that the bill would be ready by the end of this year. I'd like to make some improvements to the bill. That is why I am proposing that the bill be tabled in the second quarter of next year. I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I asked some questions and I asked Secretary to respond to Mr. Chair's questions, and he used my time to answer Mr. Zhang's question. No, Mr. Chair talked about the Giglock Monastery. I already answered. Okay, supplement your answer in writing then, Ms. Alice Mack. Madam Chair, I ask the Buildings Department a question. Planning Department, Lands Department as well. I asked, in relation to the existing illegal private columbaria, will you step up your effort and implement measures to tackle the problems? Why is it that illegal columbaria are being objected to everywhere, in every neighborhood? That's because it's poorly managed. And people are so scared. So can you step up your effort and expedite your progress? Maybe somebody in the back row from the department. Secretary, you can defer your question to somebody from either the Buildings, Planning or Lands Department. Now on planning, according to the Town Planning Ordinance, in rural areas, if we have development permission plan, only when there is a plan, such a plan, will the town planning authority have the power to take action. Now, maybe I will walk the member through our effort in the past few years. So my time is limited, so my question is directed to the Buildings Department. Some of the niches are placed in on a certain floor of a residential building. It's against the law, but your enforcement action is slow. We follow the established policies and practices in taking enforcement action. For columbaria with illegal structures which pose imminent danger, the action will be taken immediately. The question is, you have issued letters for clearance, and yet the illegal operator can just drag on his own feet for 5 to 6 years. So Ms. Mack's point is you must speed up your progress. Dr. Priscilla Lowe. Well, we have been discussing this issue since the last term of government, and we also discussed whether it's possible to educate the public and introduce some alternatives, like a ring, a commemorative ring that may not be part of the traditional Chinese culture. Now, on the displaced urns, any policy to store the displaced urn, the government should play an active role and consider the measure. Now, private columbaria are everywhere. They just want to hop on the wagon before the bill is passed. So any clear guidelines to educate consumers, as well as a message for the business operators that they will not get a license, so that consumers won't be cheated. Secretary? Well, Dr. Leung talked about advertisements, and I share her concerns. But our message is very clear. New legislation will be enacted. This is definite. At present, we work with Consumer Council, and we also have publicity effort. We let members of the public know that if you buy a niche now, you won't get any protection. The most important thing is, I think, to enact legislation as soon as possible, so that once the bill is passed, we can take enforcement action as soon as possible. At present, there is no legislation for FHD to base their enforcement action on. We'll also propose a date when the bill is tabled. Secretary, a question for you. Have you considered building columbaria underground in rock caverns? I understand our relevant government departments are looking into this issue. Any new locations like islands or rock caverns, I need to point out that although it's not next to a neighborhood, we need to consider other issues as well. For example, there must be an entrance or exit for rock caverns, and definitely there would be bottleneck for traffic. Next, can you tell me something about a BIA? It's not completed yet. Can you tell us what the study is about and how is it conducted? You mean the procedure, methodology? No, the content, the scope. What will be studied? Maybe I will defer to PS to take this question. Now, we touch upon this point in our discussion. Any proposal to regulate will be looked into to see the implications on the trade, so that the proposed framework will be pragmatic, and we don't just look at the recommendations in our BIA report. We also need to strike a balance with consumers' interest and public's interest. Due process. We commissioned a consultant. We have the representatives here today. They interview stakeholders in the market to gauge the situation, and they also looked at the implications of the proposed regulation on the trade, and the trade, through the consultant, expresses their views. Of course, the trade also or the consultant also bears in mind the government's wish to protect public's interest. And this will be relayed to the trade as well. We will strike a balance between different views. So once the report is ready, please come back and report to us. You don't need to wait for the bill. Madam Chair, we need to see how things go and the progress of the report. Madam Chair, I heard your suggestion, but I'll see if we can do it. Next, Dr. An Chang. Dr. An Chan and Mr. Wu Chiwai, 2 minutes, questions and answers. Secretary, on the location of sites for columbaria. Over the past 1 or 2 years, I found that in other countries there might be originally a park and then a graveyard in the middle of it, but recently, maybe it's because of the shortage of land, I'm seeing more urns and niches, and they remain in the cemetery, but it occupies much less space, perhaps just a name on it, and then I see walls of niches, and that design could accommodate a lot of urns. Just now, there were suggestions from members, for example, go to Sunny Bay in Lantau, go to a remote area, transport is convenient, it can accommodate crowds, or perhaps somewhere near the airport. Well, when we were young, we traveled to remote areas, to the countryside, once or twice a year for grave sweeping. We worshipped ancestors, and it was also an occasion for the whole family to relax in the countryside, if you consider it. The direct answer, Dr. Chang, is that for Sunny Bay, it is one of the potential sites. However, I must point out that there is a major highway on the side of the waterfront, and there still could be traffic problem.
Would you want to be followed by Tommy Joe? Well, I did not see Sunny Bay on the list, but when I hear from the Secretary that it's a possible site, I'm glad to hear that. And in relation to limited visiting time, this affects the supply of niches in the future. Well, I think it is a policy decision. Will you be able to give us a policy paper sooner? Well, by Sunny Bay I mean Yam Ngau. Will you have some measures in place to stop people from trying to get a share of the pie at last minute? Well, whatever they do, they will have to meet all the legal requirements before they get a license. We have to step up our public education. I am glad to hear from members that some of them keep an open mind. If we don't think out of the box, it's difficult for us to find solution and to increase the number of to increase supply in the short term. When we plan for new public niches, we can first discuss our new ideas with the panel. Mr. Tommy Zhang. Sorry, Mr. Ray Chan. I've already drawn the line. You have to follow it up on another platform. Kami-Jiang, I thank the Secretary for giving me a lesson on whether I should make a declaration. I just want to do it on the safe side. I was talking about my ancestors. Well, he doesn't know when I will have more ancestors getting buried. Will the Secretary consider changing the law so that the ashes of the deceased can be placed at home? Then there is no need to worry about the two peak of over the years. And in relation to the BIA, when did it start? When did they decide to do it? And how long would it take? What's your second question? Your second question. The BIA. When did you decide to do it, and how long would it take? We would consider, of course, subject to restriction, of allowing a number of urns to be placed at home. And on the 11th of December 2012, in the discussion paper, we made it clear that the administration will conduct a BIA. Before we did that, sorry, I did not ask that. I asked when was the decision made and how long it would take. Don't tell me about the papers. We're talking about a large-scale regulatory regime. We've all along known that we have to do it, but before we do that, we have to have some specifics and decide on the proposals. Otherwise, we will not be able to conduct a BIA. We conducted 2 consultations. Results being reported to the LegCo. We can only engage a consultant when we have the legal framework in mind. So it started, yes. How long? It's in progress. It's towards the end. When we have finalized the report, of course, it will be before the introduction of the bill. I'm glad to hear that it's being done. When it's done, please come to the panel as soon as possible. I would like to get a written reply. When was the decision made to do the BIA, and how long will the BIA take? You can't just leave it all to the consultant. You have to give them a time. 6 months, 12 months, 36 months. I'm sure they know. We've overrun by 5 minutes. I thank, first of all, the 42 deputations and individuals for coming to give us your view. And I also thank departments and the consultants for coming. We still have 1 item on the agenda. Members, deputations may leave now. If you have written submissions, please give them to the Secretariat. The next item is prevention and control of avian influenza. Dr. Cole and his team will join us. We were going to take a break, but we have overrun, so we will dispense with one now. I hope you don't mind, Dr. Cole. Hopefully we will finish at 6 sharp. May I start? Chairman, members, in 1997, there was the first avian flu case in Hong Kong. We stepped up our measures on different levels, on retail, wholesale, and on the 16th of April, in the panel meeting, we have already briefed members of the measures. In paragraph 3, we have given the salient points of these measures. Through these preventive measures, from 1997, there has not been any locally acquired case of human infection with H5N1. It shows that the risk is at a management or controllable level. Starting from 1997, in 2008 and 2011, there were 2 sporadic cases. It shows that our stringent preventive case is effective in preventing such cases. In the October 2013, our latest risk assessment of the WHO, human infection cases, as reported, come into contact with poultry or live poultry. In relation to the main virus reservoirs and the extent and distribution of the virus in animals remain unknown. And poultry infected do not show clinical infection, and that is the main difference between H5N1 and H7N9. But the virus continues to circulate in China and the neighboring countries. And experts cannot rule the possibility of a limited extent of human beings affecting each other. On the Center for Food Safety, on the level of retail level of supply of live poultry, we have stepped up our measures against H7N9. Say, for example, retail the environmental surveillance on local poultry farms and retail levels, wholesale levels, step up our surveillance on Mankamto Animal Inspection Station, and to compartmentalize imported poultry and local poultry and other poultry. Starting from the 11th of April 2013 till the end of next year, at the end of November, they will take a swab of 99,300 swabs, and it shows that none of the swabs give us a positive result. And we will, together with the National Bureau, continue to monitor the situation. And since 1998, we will only get imported poultry from registered farms. These farms will adopt a stringent measures, and there is also a traceability arrangements to ensure that, and to conduct tests to ensure that all the tests show a negative result. In general, these measures can control the risk of H5N1 and H7N9. We will be vigilant and continue to have close liaison with the mainland authorities. H7 avian flu cases will be reported, and we will continue with our enhanced measures. Any questions from members? Please give your indication. Tommy Joe, Stephen Ho, anyone else? 3 minutes. For H5N1 vaccines, some of them has been used for quite a long time. Are we doing research of new vaccines against H5N1 and H7N9? There are no infections from human beings to human beings. Is that right? And there is no clinical cases, so we can believe that for H7N9 it doesn't pass from a human being to another. For H5N1, at the end of last year and beginning of this year, we have changed to a RE6 H5N1 vaccine, which is new and the latest. Our experts think that this vaccine produce an effective level of antibodies in poultry. HN79. One is a limited extent of infection from one human being to another, and the other one is a sustained acquired cases. For out of 100 cases on the mainland, there is a handful cluster of cases. By that I mean several cases in the same family. They are related. And that's why experts cannot analyze as to whether these family members contract the disease from the same source or from their own family members. We see that the possibility is limited. When a patient passes it on to a medical practitioner, this is a recognized clinical case of human infection from another one. For the HNER, there is a case in the UK. Three members of the same family contracted the disease, but only one of them went to the Middle East. So it's very likely that the person contracted the disease in the Middle East and passed it on. For H7 and 9, most of the cases are confined to the mainland. Both scenarios are possible, unless we can analyze the data to using the incubation period. Say, for example, that one is contracted and another one is contracted only after 10 days. But since they live near a farm, that we don't know whether these family members contract the disease from the same source or not. Next, Mr. Stephen Hall. Thank you. Avian flu is nothing new. We have developed and put in place a comprehensive management mechanism of avian flu. Well, can you reassure me if our mechanism is one of the top in Hong Kong, one of the top in the world? And well, tell me some more information about rapid test and development of vaccines for local farms. At the beginning of this year, you say that the new vaccine is used. What about reassortment or mutation of the virus? Will the rapid test be sufficient to deal with imported poultry?
First question on the overall poultry risk management policy. Comparing to other places in the world, we take a more stringent approach. I can't say we are the most stringent place, but it's already very stringent. So not many countries in the world, for example, we have this standard. We work with, for example, the mainland authority, the AQSIQ, and only registered and eligible poultry farms could supply poultry, and we also have a monitoring and surveillance program. So I think it's true that in terms of live poultry risk management policy, we are at a more stringent or more advanced level. And I will defer to my colleague to take the question on vaccines. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Member, for the question. In relation to the latest development, we have introduced the RE6 vaccine. It's just been developed 2 years ago in the mainland. It has the same contagion found in dead birds in the surrounding area. So it should be the most effective in combating the latest strain. Now, for imported poultry, a rapid test will be conducted, covering both H5 and H7 viruses at the border checkpoints before they can be imported. At Mankamto, we have the PCR test, that is a rapid test. Apart from swab samples in the buccal area, at the larynx area is the most sensitive. So swab samples would be obtained from that part, and for the mainland farms at source, another round of rapid tests will be conducted. At the whole, that's happening at the wholesale market in Cheung Wan to ensure that poultry up for sale in the market will be safe. So my turn for questions. I think after me it's Mr. Vincent Fang. My question is about para D in the paper. It's about regulation of local farms, including the enforcement of biosecurity measures. I think last time we covered some of these measures. What about poultry farms registered on the mainland? Do they also adopt the stringent biosecurity measures, or are we unable to monitor them? Is that one country, two systems in the sense that we have two systems for biosecurity measures? Perhaps I'll defer to Dr. Lee to take this question. Dr. Lee Siu-yun. Thank you, Madam Chair. On the mainland, for farms supplying live poultry to Hong Kong, they have a different management policy. They would need to comply with the mainland's policy on supply of live poultry to Hong Kong. Basically, the idea of the management is the same, and we on a regular basis will send our staff to their farms to check the implementation of their policy. So far, we haven't identified any problem. That is to say, there is no one country, two systems in the sense that they both farms in both places adopt the same approach. That's basically in line with the WHO guidelines. Every year, we have staff who inspect these farms on the mainland, because we read from media reports that some reporters went to Dongguan, where there was a case involving a child, and it was discovered that they haven't adopted the biosecurity measures, or that the hygiene condition is very poor. So somebody should go up and check as soon as possible to make sure that they have these measures. As said by Dr. Lee, we do have teams regularly inspecting the poultry farms on the mainland which supply live poultry to Hong Kong. I recall that the last inspection was in May, and then afterwards we began to see cases from north to south of mainland. So there are more cases, so please send somebody to check the farms. All right, my time is up. So next member, Mr. Vincent Fang. Thank you, Madam Chair. A very simple question. Apart from avian flu, we also have swine flu and also MERS with high mortality rate. So my question is, for visitors coming from the Middle East, do we have any surveillance program? It seems that the situation over there is quite serious. And I understand the administration has purchased vaccines for avian flu. Are there many patients receiving these vaccines? Over the past 2 years, the vaccines weren't very popular. For MERS in the Middle East, it's a coronavirus. It's not avian flu. But still, we are concerned about the situation in the Middle East because the situation is not very good. Starting from April 2012, in fact, that was when the earliest case appeared. But it wasn't reported to WHO until September 2012, and it was also when the virus was identified. And since April 2012, we have seen sporadic cases. And I also, like the cases I mentioned, some healthcare staff was infected, and family members of someone who visited the Middle East also got infected. So that there was strong evidence to suggest a human-to-human transmission for MERS. And recently, it's been said that the antibodies or the antigen can be found in the body of camels, but now it's not been proven yet. We're not sure about the source, but the majority of cases share a common feature. That is, the patient have been contacting or have got in touch with poultry market. And we make announcements on flights returning from the Middle East. Those displaying the relevant symptoms should seek medical attention, and they should also tell the doctors whether they have touched any animals. And earlier, in fact, it was the season of Mecca in Islamic countries, and we did take the initiative in publicizing the information to religious groups. What about vaccines? Avian flu, that's the prevailing disease in Hong Kong. For H5N1, live poultry produced locally or imported to Hong Kong through mainland will be vaccinated. And we will also conduct tests to find out whether there is sufficient antibody in their serum. As for humans, so far we're not applying vaccination to human beings at present because of the level of outbreak. As for H7N9, so far no vaccination is possible. Recently, a strain of virus have been identified by mainland experts, which can be from which vaccines can be manufactured. However, some testings will still have to be done. For example, animal safety or safety on humans, and it will take months before the vaccines can be put to use. And by then, experts will need to assess the effectiveness of the vaccines. Any more questions from members? Dr. Kenneth Chan. If necessary, I will extend the meeting by 5 minutes. Dr. Kenneth Chan. Thank you, Madam Chair. It's a very simple question. Thank you, Secretary, for briefing us on your work on the prevention and control of avian influenza so that we understand more as far as surveillance and monitoring and etc. is concerned. I'd like to talk about the your hygiene measure on live poultry, wholesale market, etc. Now, a point is missing in this paper is about vehicles transporting poultry. Do you have such a policy? Recently, we talked about this matter in other panels, and transportation vehicles and the drivers, these are all relevant. So my question is, should we also take note of the situation of lorries? Maybe I'll defer to Dr. Sid. Thank you, Dr. Chan. We have local chicken or poultry and poultry from England. And for imported poultry, they reach Menkamto. Afterwards, they go to Cheung Sha Wan, and the vehicles must be washed thoroughly before they are allowed to go. As for local poultry, they must dedicated cages must be used. They should not be mixed up with those used in markets, and they must be thoroughly cleansed before they are transported back to the poultry farms, so that you won't bring in viruses to the farm. So on the use of cages, you're referring to the transportation chain. Maybe I'll supplement. This is something new. We have standardized the use of cages. The cages are made in plastic, and we also have a machine for the cleansing of cages. And like Dr. Sid said, the cages will have to be separated. It must not be mixed with cages used in retail outlets. From wholesale to retail to transportation personnel, we hold seminars to enhance the knowledge on the prevention of disease. Last question about point K in the paper on the zonal management approach, zonal approach policy. And it's subject to an agreement between Hong Kong and mainland as to when supply of poultry into Hong Kong will be suspended. It's said here if there is any outbreak of a fatal AI incident, the import will be suspended. Are we talking about fatality in chickens or detection of H5N1 or H7N9 in humans? Well, let me supplement. This policy is actually modeled on the guidelines issued by the Food and Agriculture Organizations of the UN. And there is a 13-kilometer radius, and should there be any outbreak, there should be any segregation or suspension of importation within the 13-kilometer radius. And we apply this to human beings. When there are AI incidents involving humans, we will adopt this 13-kilometer zone approach. Now, H5N1 is not deadly. So we're not following the FAO. Instead, we apply this set of guidelines to H7N9 on chickens, so that according to our agreement with the mainland at present, if H7N9 viruses are detected in chickens, then the supply of poultry will be suspended within 13 kilometers. And that's the case applied all over the world. That's the 13-kilometer rule according to FAO and the outbreak of cases. And we just apply this to human infections, and then we further apply that to outbreaks in chickens with low contagion rate. So if this is to be applied to humans in terms of H7N9 virus, do we need to seek agreement with the mainland?
The arrangement of imported chicken is not a unilateral arrangement. We cooperate with the mainland authorities. We work out an agreed arrangement. We think that since we have to respect the spirit of the agreement, we need consent from both sides for any changes. That's why when I was asked that there are outbreaks in the US, we decide what to do, because this doesn't involve the mainland. There is no mechanism that we under which we're cooperating with the Europe like we do with the mainland. And when it comes to import of live poultry, it's subject to a very stringent measure. So unless for registered farms on the mainland supplying chicken to poultry, there are infection cases. Let me put it this way. If there are cases of poultry contracting H7N9, 13 kilometers of the case will stop supplying live poultry to Hong Kong. I think time's is almost up. I thank the officials for giving us information about the arrangement. This is the end of the meeting.